Seven Densities, the Law of One. This in many ways is a PhD in metaphysics, the nature of reality, the nature of being, the nature of consciousness, who we are and why we're here. I highly recommend checking it out. The Law of One, the link's in the bio below. It's one of the most profound influences on my being. One of the main aspects is the idea of the one infinite creator, and how that one infinite creator is exploring through all of these creation designs, of which this is just one. And I even made a little jingle to go along with it. One infinite creator expressing itself. Hey, one infinite creator expressing itself. Hoorah! One infinite creator expressing itself. Ha! And when you get to some of these states of self-realization of the non-duality, of God, of source, of infinity, this childlike humor, presence, bliss, peace, essence just channels through moment to moment. Another main teaching of the Law of One is that everything is love, light. And everything is in service to that exploration. And we'll see here that there's no polarity. There's no right or wrong. There's no disharmony. And there's no lack. Everything is just infinite perfection. These are more advanced states of consciousness that are able to transcend the idea of right and wrong and polarity and disharmony and lack, and just be from a place of infinite perfection on a moment-to-moment basis. And naturally, it's in service to others, in service to the absolute highest. So there's only identity. Are you an egotistic individual? Greedy? Narcissistic, pathological, megalomaniac, butterfly affecting negativity, constrained with all of the onion layers of identity? Or are you the one infinite creator? Are you God? Are you source? Do you recognize that the other is actually another expression of the self? Because when you do, all of those egotistical, individualistic, constraining, focal pointy behaviors melt. They melt, they dissipate, they dissolve, they fade away. Densities can be thought of as evolutionary leaps. We're going to have some visuals here in a moment. Like mastering belts in martial arts. And the third density is the human density, and that is highly sought after. And we'll unpack that here more in a moment. So let's check out these graphics. This first one is actually the graphic of one of the guests we've had on the show, a good friend, Umberto Braga. Thanks so much for making this. Go and support him. So, 7 density model of consciousness. So as you can see here, these evolutionary leaps, they look like the different belts that you get in martial arts as you keep graduating, you going through the school. And starting off in that first density is very physical, energetic materials, elements, second density being physical plants, animals, third density being physical humans, fourth density some variable physicality, fifth density pure energy, sixth density pure energy unified thought forms, and then seventh density pure energy all objective awareness. So we're going to unpack each of these densities in detail, and I would like us to sort of keep the idea of the visual of the evolutionary leaps in this model in mind, because you didn't just randomly get here, right? We've graduated beyond nihilism, and we've graduated beyond thinking this is all an accident and that I'm just randomly here. We've graduated far, far beyond that. And so now we're asking some of the more profound metaphysical questions. What is infinity? What is God? What is source? What are we doing here? And so the general idea of the timescale according to Ra, and again, Ra is the sixth density social memory complex that was channeled by Carla Ruckert, and this is around 1980 or so about 40 years ago. And so that in itself should be something interesting to people in the sense of, okay, well, how about off-world, more advanced intelligence that has taken in more of all that is and is trying to share that with us? Maybe we should be a little bit more fucking serious about listening. Probably. We need to be more humble and less hubristic. And so this is that time scale according to Ra. So this third density, this human density, is a massive choice point along the trajectory. And the choice is either service to self, me, more for me, or service to other. Authentic, genuine, loving, compassionate, true service to the flourishing of all. Because you recognize that that is you. That this is all one being. All right, so let's unpack these first densities. So the eighth density and the first density are the same. It's very much like the snake eating its tail. This is very much like the Ouroboros, a very perennial spiritual wisdom and symbol that's been used for thousands of years. And this is beingness, awareness. So a new universe is born, which incorporates all that the Creator has experienced of itself. It requires a lot of imagination to expand oneself as truly closely to infinity as possible, because an infinite amount of exploration that's occurring with completely different creation designs, with completely different vehicles of sentience, with completely different words of experience that are being written on completely different blank pages of awareness, consciousness, sentience. So it requires a lot of imagination to think about what we had incorporated and what we're exploring here and what we're going to explore as we hit that Godhead. And that's what this is. And so we launched off, and here we are in this creation design, where we have the reality as it appears to us. It's illusory, but it's the way that it appears to us as these fundamental building blocks of earth, wind, fire, water, a very timeless presence for billions of years. No awareness of self yet. And then in 2, second density, you have growth and movement, the evolution of plants, animals, and organic life, the next level of exploring. This is where things like chimps begin to rub off on each other, and that creates the separate self, that creates the other. And this is also where humans, the third density, trains second density pets. So if you have dogs or cats, you may not even know, but you're literally training them to become ready to be humans, which is also what we did. You can't just come in and incarnate into a human body without having went through the schooling, the classes of what it even requires to actually harmonically occupy this incredible instrument and vehicle. Think about that, right? It'd be like if I said that we're going to throw a 3-year-old into the PhD classroom. No. Like, obviously the 3-year-old has to go through some classes, some densities, before it can enter into the PhD realm of dancing and play. You have to level up. You have to gain these martial arts belts through the densities. And this is what's fascinating, is then you sort of get a better understanding of what the structure of our reality is truly like, and what to do to maximize your own well-being and also the well-being of all. And so let's move on to that. So now we're in our good old third density, self-awareness and choice. This is very exciting. This is where we find ourselves at as humans. Many of us are still in the extremely limbic, primal, behavioral systems. But many of us have moved up a little bit beyond that and are trying to figure out how to harmonize through all of the war and despair that we've had. And some of us are poking out of third density into fourth density and even fifth density, and very, very few beyond that. But then they're acting like the teachers to the vast majority in the third density to try and get them to level up, to pierce the veil and self-realize. So this is the axis upon which creation itself turns. This is what Ra calls the mind-body-spirit complex, which is a really good term for it. It synthesizes and summarizes the actual vehicle itself, mind, body, spirit, complex. The vehicle itself and the vehicle's relation to God, infinity, source is really well synthesized with those 4 words in this third density. So consciousness is the ground of all experience. It's the center of the universe. It's the paper and the screen. So consciousness and awareness is the blank paper. It's the blank screen. All of the modulations, the thoughts, feelings, emotions, belief, and objects that are experienced are all of the different social media apps and all of the different emails and phone calls and texts and videos that happen on the device. But we are the screen before the modulation. And if you recognize that screen is eternal, that screen is infinite, that screen's essential nature is bliss and peace, that is what is meant by enlightenment. And that's when you really melt into that self-realization. that infinity, that God source within you. And then you recognize that same God source infinity in others. And that's when you can only be in service to them. That's when you can only be from the absolute highest morality. The most fascinating aspect to infinity, in my opinion, is the veil of forgetting. You can't write a better play than this. This is the best game in town. It's so obvious. It's right under our noses how beautiful this is and how it's by far the coolest thing that could possibly exist. Literally, God's source infinity has the capability to veil ourselves. We can veil ourselves and forget who we are. That is so fascinating. On the macro metaphysical level, that is by far the coolest thing that I have ever learned about who we truly are. The fact that we have that feature, that mechanism, that ability is so damn awesome. And that's why we call it hide and seek. That's fucking what this is. It's hide and seek. And that's why kids love hide and seek. That's basically infinity as a child before it gets polluted by the matrix subscriptions that give it ego and layers of identity. That is the actual nature of what infinite God source is. It's just playing hide and seek. Realize that you are hiding and that there's actually something to seek, and that what you're seeking has an extremely, not only pragmatic benefit to maximizing your own health and well-being, being in bliss and peace for yourself and for everyone around you, but also it is the most true thing about you is to remember who you are. You have to pierce the veil. That's what the Greeks called anamnesia, which is the remembrance. Henosis, union. Yoga, union. Union with what? With God, with source, with infinity. Self-realization. It's by far the most fascinating aspect to infinity. And it's like also imagining all of the different creation designs that are happening and all of their unique ways that they're veiling and that they're piercing the veil. It's so fascinating. There's also the introduction of polarity. So the choice being made between poles. And again, so this is very much like, again, like that perennial spiritual symbol of the yin and yang, where you have the poles, but that you have the entire whole is transcendent. The entire whole is God, infinity, source, transcendent truth, love, light, but expressed here in these poles, which is the choice point in this third density. And so you become aware that you're a soul exploring a journey. You're not just some finite biological creature that is here to throw poop at other people's faces. You're a soul on a journey, and that every single one of these decisions is karmically paramount. And so that's the choice, that's the free will. Those are the poles between service to self and service to other. Your creativity. Are you going to serve yourself, STS, service to self? Are you going to have ego? Are you going to have greed? Are you going to have negativity and malevolence and resentment and fear and anxiety and depression and also butterfly effect that onto others? Or are you going to have service to other? That choice comes up all the time, everywhere. Are you in true, authentic, genuine service to others, in bringing others value, in bringing them more harmony, more bliss, more peace? Maximizing our ecological, sustainable growth and prosperity and well-being and abundance. That's the essence of STO on a moment-to-moment basis. And that's how you become more evolved towards fourth density. And you can sort of see more and more people leaving the egoic levels of consciousness slowly and being in service to other more and more. In many ways, the third density is like extremely intense metaphysically speaking. It's highly sought after, like we said earlier. And the reason why is because there's just a tremendous amount of these catalysts that are here in the third density. There's a lot of contrast, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of difficulties. And they're all compressed in a big pressure cooker with a lot of different mirrors. If you even go back 1,000 years, maybe there were 100 million people or something on the planet. And that's a lot less mirrors, that's a lot less pressure cooker. Right now we're extremely geopolitically interwoven with one another. We have the planetary telecommunications that are online, the information technology age, the approaching the artificial general intelligence age, the virtual and augmented realities acting as an awakening mechanism for us. There's a lot of contrast and choice happening. It feels pretty intense. There's choice with your family, there's choice with your friends, there's choice with coworkers, there's choice with people online, with your mate selection, with entrepreneurship and North Stars, and that's a lot. It's completely different than being a dog in a house. But it's also a lot different than when you get up to the fourth and fifth densities, where those things don't actually have as much contrast anymore, because you're acting as a channel of the divine, of God, of source infinity. So you're no longer having these difficult decisions between the depression and the flourishing, or the positivity and the negativity, but that things are very naturally in a state of infinite perfection. So the whole third density acts as a big drill sergeant. Who am I? What is my source? What do I truly want? If you get kids that are 12 years old to inquire into the question, what is I? And they have to go through the self-realization process starting at 12. And by the time they're 18 or 22, that they have had a strong guru and they've underwent a process where they've felt the infinity, the God, the source, we're going to have a much more robust, flourishing, anti-fragile, prosperous civilization. And that's where we're heading. So it's not going to take 3 decades up in the mountains at a monastery to self-realize and become enlightened. And it's also not going to take people like me 5 hardcore years of trying to parse for signal and be hardcore dedicated to truth to have it yield. We're going to streamline this process over time. So buckle in. It's super exciting. And this is very much like a poker game in many ways, because what's happening is that the cards, if you're playing a game of Texas Hold'em, you can't actually see the other's cards. And then what you're doing is you're deciphering whether or not they are in service to themselves or in service to others. And so what happens is that over time, as you enter into the fourth density, that dissolves, as in everyone's going to have their poker hands be open, and everyone's going to be in service to others on an ongoing enlightened basis, which is super exciting. And there will be challenges there too with people that chose service to self that enter into the fourth density, but we'll touch on that here in a moment. So in a sense, suffering forces consciousness to gain freedom from the ego. Love that. So we're seeking, piercing the veil to become more powerful, more godlike, more unity, become that diamond necklace that is already around our neck, and recognize that we are an eternal being having a temporary physical experience. All right. Density 4, love understanding. Let's see if I can get the scan converter to register that I have moved. Should pop up here in a moment. Excellent. Just needed a little reset there. Okay. So the fourth density. And this is why, as the producer of a program, that it's important to also keep an eye on your live feed, on your program feed, because there might be moments that happen like that where some of the software gets frozen for a moment and you have to reset it so that way the entirety of the rest of the session goes well. So just a little bit of a heads up for those that are content creators. Fourth density, love and understanding. The veil starts to disappear. There's fearlessness of death. Sensitivity to vibration. So from that mind-body-spirit complex, we become a social memory complex. A group consciousness with no loss of individuation. It becomes more like a hive mind, having full access to all of civilization's experiences, like a walking library completely exposed to each other. It's the disappearance of dishonesty, naked, vulnerable, honest, laying it all out. Negative structures will crumble, fall, and disappear. In this, the most sort of relatable way to understand the evolution from third to fourth density is in many ways the word empathy. It sort of is one of the key words that we experience in that process. So it's like when you sit down with somebody and you undergo a process of opening up your heart to their story and their journey and who they are, and you sit there in silence and genuinely, authentically give them eye contact and listen, and then reply with really good questions that show them that you're listening and caring about what they're sharing. And that goes on for like an hour, and they feel extremely felt and registered and heard and whatnot. Those are sort of like some of the first sort of steps beyond the third density egoic service to self towards service to other. Now, it's important to understand that even though you're baby stepping into that fourth density, you're already going to be, in a sense, beginning to feel some of the, quote, fifth density needing to balance out that love with wisdom, in the sense of, you know, if that person that you sat with for an hour calls you back the next week and says, hey, would you mind sitting down with me for an hour again? Well, at some point you may need to create a little bit of a graceful, wise distance, in the sense of saying that, you know, actually I would love to, but I need to be focused on this other project that I'm working on right now, or I'm serving some other people in some way, right? So then that's knowing how to make that balance with wisdom, and that's a core aspect of fifth density, but it ends up leaking into some of what you're ending up doing as you get even into the fourth density. So ultimately what ends up happening is that you realize that, and this is all over our social fabric today, if you look at like millennials, and if you look at Generation Z and who's coming up here in Generation Alpha, one of the most important things that they care about is the mission or the vision or the purpose of a company. So if the company's mission, vision, and purpose is in service to others, they're going to do business with that company. If they even smell even a bit of service to self, they're really sensitive today. It's super fascinating that they don't do business with that company. And so you can almost see it happening in the youthful perception and in the youthful consciousness that's evolving and awakening, that they're not doing business with the service to self companies, that they're doing business with the service to others. And so even you, as you're an entrepreneur or an artist or scientist or engineer or spiritual leader or whatever you're doing in the world, that the more that you're in service to other, the more that you're very clearly with your vision, mission, and purpose aligned to only be in service to other people authentically, lovingly, genuinely, what's going to happen is you're going to grow much more naturally, harmonically that way. And what's going to happen is you are over time going to have more and more of your own veil disappear. So once you sort of get closer and closer to this fourth density and you start baking in that love and understanding density, what's going to happen is the whole notion of self-realization, that seeking impulse, it takes over. It takes over. It's so important for you to know yourself as infinity, as God, as source expressing itself. And that's what's going to rank you up into the fifth and sixth density. The fearlessness of death is very, very common once you sort of rank yourself up, because you realize that you are infinite, you are eternal, and that there's nothing to fear. But this doesn't mean going to the pole of being stupid, where you're walking on the street without even looking at cars. So that middle path, that middle way, that Goldilocks zone, we've talked about that in our direct path episodes. Again, so that very social memory complex, right? That's what Ra was talking about with that social memory complex that had evolved on Venus about 2.6 billion years ago, and that he was sixth density, so that there was, the entity was sixth density, so there was a social memory complex that has formed of this group consciousness's evolution over multiple densities. And so Ra had access to the libraries and the wisdoms of all of their experiences and was trying to communicate that to us through the channel of Carla Ruckert. And so we have to take these things very, very seriously, because think about similarly with us. If you just project out as well, as we evolve over the span of long periods of time, what will happen is that we will, in a way, also serve as a social memory complex to other evolving civilizations that are trying to pierce their veil in the third density. So in a sense, we become mentors, just like Ra in this case is a mentor to us. And remember, there will still be service to self mechanics. People can still choose to be in the service to self frequencies as they get through the densities, but we'll get to that here also in a moment. Density 5, the fifth density, light and wisdom. We talked about this a little bit in 4, but if you're really starting to feel like you're not being overzealous with your service to other, if you feel like you're beginning to balance in wisdom, if you feel like you're serving people without martyrdom, without self-sacrifice, excuse me, if you're learning worthiness and unity, if you're feeling like you're spending more time alone, learning lessons of wisdom and self-sufficiency, if you're only taking action when you're respecting the free will of another self, that's when you really know that you're starting to enter into some of these fifth density ideas and essences with your beingness. Even this one was super beautiful for me. I had an example just this holiday where I had a little bit of egoic tendencies from my mother and my uncle that were infringing upon my free will. And I took a step and distanced myself politely, saying that I can only hang out this holiday if we're going to not impede my free will. And that ended up not being their choice. Because typically what happens is family and friends and other people, when they see somebody becoming self-realized, enlightened to that God source infinity, where they have a blissful and peaceful essence, not always, but sometimes what family and friends will do is they'll do the bucket of crabs, and they'll pull down the crab that's escaping out of the bucket. It's becoming enlightened, self-realized. And so to create that distance with your family or your friends, again, many of your friends that you knew 10 years ago, again, I'll give you another real example from my life. 10 years ago, I had a friend that I spent a decent amount of time with in college, and that they knew me decently well at that time 10 years ago. And today, 10 years later, I am a completely different. I affiliate myself with infinity and with God and Source on a moment-to-moment basis. 10 years ago, I was affiliating myself with the name Alan and being a finite biological being and all this other type of stuff. So just recognize that when somebody's trying to say something about you, like this person is today, trying to pull me down, that they don't know me whatsoever. They don't know my perspectives, my worldviews. They don't know my relationship with Source or my relationship with infinity or God and my metaphysics and the way that I'm aiming to bring value to other people, expressing that through me. That is likely happening to so many other people with their family and their friends. And this density, fifth density, is all about balancing wisdom into the love. Do not, under any circumstances, go and begin sending them messages on any of the social platforms or trying to reconcile your loving relationship with them. Now, I had a phone call with that person about almost a year ago about the way that they were beginning to express themselves around some of the ways that I was becoming enlightened. And we healed a little bit there. They were acting as a strong mirror for me in some ways. But today it's just become so blatantly negative and bucket of crabs that it's just distance. Until there's a moment where the person themselves seeks and becomes more on the direct path to self-realization themselves, and then maybe there's a harmonization downstream. And same thing's true with your family as well. Prioritize your relationship with Source, God, Infinity as number one. And then secondary, any human-to-human relationship. And that's what will bring you the most flourishing. And you'll notice that the idea of Wu Wei, or effortless action, like in the Taoist tradition, the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu, what you'll notice is that effortless action naturally channels through you because you've become an instrument of the divine. And that's what right action is. And so it's become really clear to me that I'm here to help people break out of their ego suffering and quantum leap to non-dual awareness. Increase the vibration of consciousness on earth, and joy being the light that's translated in the physical body. And I've talked about this quite a bit, where I am the soul angle that comes to planets at these pivotal points in their trajectories in this third density, and quickly parses for signal about self-realization, and then aims to disseminate it to other people to help them with their finding. And that's really beautiful that I found that out about myself at the age of 28. And in many ways, I was communicating with my higher self and that's what we'll get to here in the sixth density, and seeing if I had broken my previous high score, because that's a pretty good, solid, youthful time to have hit it. But I also am aiming to make the pedagogical syntheses of self-realization in virtual reality and give that to children that are 5, 8, 12 years old to help them pierce the veil before they're a teenager. And that's the service to other. And you can support us and that project in 2021 and beyond. You can find all of our links in the bio below to support us on that front. Okay, sixth density. Unity balance. Pure white light. 100% non-physical. Perfect balance of love and wisdom achieved. I'm definitely working on this. The STS path concedes, so service to self path concedes to love and light in the early sixth density. So this is sort of what we were talking about, where service to self can choose in this third density to continue entering into the fourth and beyond with the service to self mentality. And that's what keeps the light and the dark in friction as they ascend. But when it gets to that sixth density, it needs to concede to love and light. But there's many other creation designs where there's many other sort of fluxes that are occurring between the two poles in an ascension process, where there's different balances and different vehicles of sentience to experience those creations and different styles of ways to pierce the veil. You really have to use your imagination to fully get infinity, to fully get the one and infinite creator expressing itself. And that's why all expressions of infinity are valid. All choice and expression of infinity is completely valid. And that transcends the right and wrong and the disharmony and the lack that we were talking about earlier. And so here, all service to other has been gained, as in you've really taken in as much of the service to other authentic expression that you've been delivering, and you've taken that all in, and now you serve as the higher self to all of your previous incarnations in order to complete polarization into the seventh density. You leave a replica of your consciousness to the first to sixth densities. So in this case, it would be like this. When I explain my relationship with my higher self, I have it's a very spiritual tether in a sense, where there's a relationship with what appears to be an ethereal entity that is very clearly a representation of a more whole version of who I am. And so in this case, it would be my higher self that I'm in a communication with has already went through the process that I've went through. So again, you have to use your imagination to imagine how the quote atlas that exists in the first density, second density, third density, fourth density, fifth density, all the way to that sixth density. All of those atlases are currently being explored in different creation designs, following different bifurcations on their trees of possibility. So the atlas that never decided to pursue metaphysics and consciousness and self-realization exists in another creation design where he has more service to self dynamics. So if that's beginning to make sense, keep using your imagination and keep recognizing that you have a tether to a higher self that you can meditate on and create a portal of communication that's more rich and more clear, and then leverage that in order for you to more clearly understand your expression of infinity. And that's what I do with it. And this is in many ways where I am feeling like I'm kind of figuring out the balance in many ways right now between love and wisdom. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm figuring out the balance between love and wisdom. I'm doing my best to become what you could call mirror consciousness, which is in this sixth density, which is this pure white light where you're just acting as a channel of infinity, of the divine, of God, of source. In everything that you do is 100% of the peak morality. And so that's definitely where I'm creeping up and doing my best to express myself as. And that should be a goal of most of us, is to slowly become more and more of a pure, clear channel of the absolute highest morality expression of infinity. But hitting that balance, if you feel like you're leaving a go at consciousness, again, that first thing is really hitting that love, that service to other, that love and understanding slowly, then balancing that out with wisdom, and then recognizing more and more that those two things become one. The love and wisdom become one as a mirror state of being. So that's that general third to sixth or so. Okay, and density 7. Okay, gateway / completion. So as above, so below. We express all lessons in this creation, then give it back and merge with source. So it's just like a heartbeat that starts again. So we lose all personal identity and memory, even though we've worked through all of this creation design up to the sixth density. We lose all of the personal identity and memory, and that's our passport into the next creation. So our I am becomes God in the next creation. And the next creation can be completely different. The different creation designs have different vehicles of sentience. And that's this beauty of this gateway. It's almost like every single one of these lub-dubs, lub-dub, 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 or your blood glucose levels, or your eye accommodation, or the myriad of other night and day. There's so many of these. And these juxtapositions are precisely polarities, are precisely what the nature of our reality is. The nature of our reality is, simply put, very simply analogized to our inhale and exhale. Because it's not only the breath that gives us life force itself from the photosynthesis of phytoplankton and trees that we're interdependent with in a style of unity there, but it's also on a very metaphysical, all of the densities level. This is the beautiful process of the inhalation and the exhalation. This evolutionary process that reaches that attractor, that Godhead, and that goes through another inhalation and exhalation. And that's the Ouroboros. And that's why we've learned all of these lessons, we lose all of them, and that passports us into the next creation because we merge with Source, and we become God in the next creation. We are already the I am God. Our I am God that we already are becomes God in the next creation. And we do the similar thing where we create new vehicles of sentience in new realities. We veil ourselves, then we pierce that veil and awaken, and that's the eternal hide and seek, exploring all different types of experience and phenomenology and fun and play. And we've been doing that. We're going to keep doing that. It can never end. That's the point. That's the nature of this. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's the most beautiful game in town. And to fully wake up to that is paramount. All right. So that's the 7 densities. Again, the link's in the bio to the Law of One. I highly, highly recommend checking that out. It's extremely thought-provoking, again, coming from a 6-density social memory complex. We should take this very seriously. One infinite creator exploring. Everything is love light, no polarity, no right wrong, no disharmony, no lack, only identity. Ego individual versus one infinite creator. Densities as evolutionary leaps, like belts in martial arts that you master. And this 3rd density being highly sought after. Again, from that beingness awareness is both 8 and 1. Earth, wind, fire, water, timeless presence, no awareness of self. To 2, growth and movement, plants, animals, organic life, the next level of exploring, creating separate self and other. And then 3, with the mind-body-spirit complex, the consciousness being the ground of all existence, the center of the universe, the ground of all experience. The veil of forgetting, the most fascinating aspect to infinity, piercing that, the process of that, so fascinating. Introduction of polarity, becoming a soul exploring a journey, deciding STS versus STO, really seeing your catalysts that are actually in service, heading into the love and understanding density, becoming a social memory complex with group consciousness, hive mind, the disappearance of dishonesty, light and wisdom with 5th density, so balancing it out with wisdom without martyrdom, learning worthiness and unity, respecting the free will of other selves. 6th density, unity balance, pure white light, perfect balance of love and wisdom. All expressions of infinity are valid, serving as the higher self. And the gateway completion, expressing all the lessons, merging with source like a heartbeat, starting again, passporting into the next creation. The I am becomes God in that next creation. Boom. Just like that. I would love to hear what you feel, so write it out in the comments below. I'll see if I can get to it and hit the ball back. Like the video. If it brought you value, subscribe. If you haven't yet, share the video with other people that need to learn about the Law of One. Again, go and check out the Law of One. It's so important. It's been really important to me. It's been really important to one of the people that are very much like my mentors, Bentinho Massaro. I'll also put the link to his channel in the bio below as well. He's been an incredible spiritual synthesist. You can watch his Mirror Talks podcast. He does a great job there as well. Their whole team does. And recognize where you're at in these densities and do your best to continue piercing the veil and becoming more in service to others and balancing that love out with wisdom. Those are good next steps. Do that. Message me if you have questions, simulationseries@gmail.com. It's in the bio below. Pierce the veil. Awaken to the true nature of your infinity. I love you very much. Thank you for tuning in. And let's wrap with the song. We are one infinite creator expressing itself. Hey, one infinite creator expressing itself. Hey, one infinite creator expressing itself. Hoorah! One infinite creator expressing itself. Yeah! One infinite creator expressing itself. Hey, one infinite creator expressing itself.